Have you ever noticed how one sentence from another person can ruin your entire day? Someone questions your abilities, a stranger cuts you off in traffic, a coworker takes credit for your work, or a family member says something that stays in your mind long after the conversation has ended. Hours later, the moment is over, yet it continues replaying in your head. The other person has already moved on with their life, but somehow they're still living inside your thoughts. That's because the greatest prison isn't built from iron bars. It's built from emotional dependence. The moment someone else can decide whether you feel angry, anxious, offended, or confident, they hold power over you. Most people surrender that power every single day without realizing it. The Stoics understood something nearly 2,000 years ago that many people still fail to grasp today. Freedom doesn't begin when the world becomes kinder. It begins when the world loses its ability to control your inner state. Becoming emotionally untouchable doesn't mean you stop feeling emotions. It doesn't mean becoming cold, distant, or indifferent. It means developing a mind so disciplined that your peace can no longer be stolen by people, circumstances, or events beyond your control. Once you understand this, you'll begin to see your entire life differently. Imagine a puppet suspended by dozens of strings. Every movement depends on someone else's hands. Now imagine another puppet standing beside it with every string cut. It moves only because it chooses to move. Most people believe they're the second puppet, but they're actually the first. A compliment makes them feel valuable. An insult makes them question themselves. Good news fills them with confidence. Bad news convinces them they're failing. Their emotions rise and fall depending on whatever happens around them. They don't control their inner world, they simply react to it. Now ask yourself an uncomfortable question. Why should another person's words have the authority to determine the quality of your day? Why should traffic decide whether you're patient? Why should social media determine your self-worth? Why should circumstances dictate your character? If your peace depends on everything outside of you going according to plan, then your peace is incredibly fragile, and life has a way of reminding us that almost nothing ever goes according to plan. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most. He wasn't writing about emotional strength from the comfort of a peaceful life. He ruled an empire constantly threatened by war, disease, betrayal, political conflict, and unimaginable pressure. Every day brought new uncertainty. Every decision affected thousands of lives. Yet despite living in one of history's most demanding positions, he kept returning to one simple idea. Your mind remains yours unless you choose to surrender it. Notice what he never promised. He never promised fair treatment. He never promised respectful people. He never promised that life would become easier. Instead, he pointed towards something far more valuable. Your inner world can remain free even when your outer world is in chaos. That distinction changes everything. Most people spend their entire lives fighting the wrong battle. Imagine standing in the middle of a violent storm. The wind howls around you, rain crashes against your face, and thunder shakes the sky. What would happen if you tried to stop the storm itself? You couldn't. No amount of frustration would calm the wind. No amount of anger would stop the rain. Yet this is exactly how people approach life. They try to force others to understand them. They demand fairness from an unfair world. They expect certainty from an uncertain future. They fight reality itself. And every time reality refuses to cooperate, they suffer. The Stoics offered a completely different approach. Instead of trying to control the storm, become the mountain. Storms still arrive. Rain still falls. The wind still blows with incredible force. But the mountain doesn't chase the clouds or argue with the weather. It remains exactly where it is. Its strength isn't measured by the absence of storms, but by its ability to remain unmoved while they pass. Real strength works the same way. It's not measured by how little adversity you experience. It's measured by how little adversity changes who you are. Anyone can remain calm when life is easy. The true test begins when everything starts falling apart. Here's where modern psychology and Stoic philosophy quietly agree. Most emotional suffering isn't created by events themselves. It's created by the meaning we immediately attach to those events. Someone ignores your message. Your mind instantly creates a story that they don't respect you. Your boss offers constructive criticism. Suddenly your mind decides you're not good enough. A friend cancels plans, and before long, you've convinced yourself they no longer value your friendship. Notice how quickly the mind fills in the blanks. Reality gives us a single event, but our imagination writes an entire novel around it. The Stoics trained themselves to interrupt that story before it became their reality. They understood that between what happens to you and how you respond lies a space. Within that space exists your greatest power. Most people never notice it because they react too quickly. They mistake their first emotional impulse for the truth. But your first reaction is rarely your wisest one. Think of it like carrying a cup filled to the top with coffee. As you walk through a crowded room, someone accidentally bumps into you. Coffee spills everywhere. Now ask yourself a simple question. Why did coffee come out of the cup? Because that's what was inside. It couldn't spill water because there was no water inside. Life works much the same way. When pressure arrives, whatever has been quietly growing inside you eventually spills out. When someone insults you, what comes out? Anger, pride, bitterness, fear, or patience, understanding, self-control. Life doesn't create your character, it reveals it. Pressure simply exposes what has been growing beneath the surface all along. This realization is difficult because it forces us to stop blaming the world for reactions that belong to us. We often say, "They made me angry," or "That situation stressed me out." But what if those moments didn't create your emotions? What if they simply uncovered parts of yourself that still needed work? Suddenly, every difficult person becomes an unexpected teacher. Every inconvenience becomes an opportunity to observe yourself. Every setback becomes a mirror, showing you exactly where your inner strength still needs to grow. That's why Stoicism places so much emphasis on self-mastery rather than controlling other people. You will never control every insult, every disappointment, every betrayal, or every unexpected obstacle life places in your path. But you can train the one thing that always remains within your reach: your response. Imagine allowing a complete stranger to walk into your home and rearrange everything. They move your furniture, repaint your walls, throw away your belongings, and leave whenever they feel like it. Most people would never tolerate such an invasion. Yet every day we allow strangers to rearrange something far more valuable than our homes. We allow them to rearrange our minds. One rude comment steals our confidence. One negative opinion ruins our mood. One moment of rejection convinces us that we're not enough. We hand over the keys to our peace without even noticing. The Stoics believed this happened because people confuse reputation with identity. They begin measuring themselves through mirrors held by everyone else. But every mirror reflects differently. One person sees confidence where another sees arrogance. One person sees kindness where another sees weakness. One person admires your ambition while another envies it. If you spend your life searching for your identity in the opinions of others, you'll never stop changing, because every new opinion demands a different version of yourself. True identity isn't built through applause or criticism. It's built through repeated actions that nobody else sees. It's built in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when you choose discipline over comfort, honesty over convenience, patience over anger, and wisdom over impulse. Those moments shape your character far more than public recognition ever could. There is a prison more dangerous than any built from concrete and steel. It has no walls, no guards, and no locked doors. Yet millions of people spend their entire lives trapped inside it. It's the prison of needing everyone else's approval. People stay silent because they fear being judged. They chase careers they don't enjoy because they want to impress people they barely know. They hide who they truly are because acceptance feels safer than authenticity. Without realizing it, they become prisoners of opinions they can never control. The irony is almost tragic. The very people we're trying so desperately to impress are usually worrying about what others think of them. Everyone becomes trapped inside the same invisible cycle. The Stoics escaped that prison not because they stopped caring about people, but because they stopped allowing other people's opinions to define their worth. And that raises a question that changes everything. If becoming emotionally untouchable isn't about suppressing your emotions, and it isn't about pretending that pain doesn't exist, then what does true emotional freedom actually look like? The answer begins with one of the most misunderstood ideas in all of Stoic philosophy. And once you understand it, you'll never look at frustration, criticism, or adversity the same way again. The idea that changes everything is surprisingly simple. The Stoics called it the dichotomy of control. But don't let the name fool you. This isn't just another philosophical concept to memorize. It's a way of seeing the world that can completely transform how you experience every challenge, every conflict, and every disappointment. At its core, it asks one question whenever something disturbs your peace. Is this within my control, or is it not? That single question has the power to end countless hours of unnecessary suffering. Most people never stop to ask it. Instead, they pour their energy into fighting things that were never theirs to control in the first place. They argue with the past, wishing events had unfolded differently. They obsess over the future, trying to predict outcomes that haven't happened. They lose sleep over what strangers think about them. They replay conversations, imagining better responses. They try to control how others behave, hoping that if everyone would simply change, then life would finally become peaceful. But peace built on controlling the world is impossible, because the world has never belonged to us. Imagine standing on the shore of the ocean, shouting at the waves to stop. It wouldn't matter how intelligent you are, how passionate your argument is, or how badly you want calm waters. The sea doesn't negotiate. Life is much the same. It doesn't ask for our permission before bringing loss, failure, misunderstanding, or change. Yet many people spend decades arguing with reality, believing that resistance will somehow rewrite the rules of existence. Every moment spent fighting what cannot be changed is a moment stolen from what can. Epictetus understood this better than almost anyone. Before becoming one of history's greatest Stoic teachers, he lived as a slave. Think about that for a moment. He possessed almost no external freedom. Other people controlled where he lived, what he did, and even how he was treated. Yet despite all of that, he insisted that no one could truly enslave his mind without his consent. His body belonged to another man, but his judgments, his character, and his choices remained his own. That's an extraordinary idea, because it reminds us that freedom isn't always determined by our circumstances. Often, it's determined by where we choose to place our attention. Consider how often your attention is hijacked throughout a normal day. You wake up and immediately check your phone. One negative headline changes your mood. A critical comment online lingers in your thoughts. Someone else's success makes you question your own progress. Before you've even had breakfast, your emotional state has already been handed over to forces outside yourself. The Stoics would say that every time your peace depends on something external, you've unknowingly become its servant. This doesn't mean ignoring the world or pretending that nothing matters. It means recognizing the difference between influence and control. You can influence how people respond to you through kindness, honesty, and integrity. But you cannot control whether they appreciate those qualities. You can prepare diligently for an interview, but you cannot control the employer's final decision. You can love someone deeply, but you cannot control whether they choose to stay. The healthiest mindset is to give everything you have to what belongs to you, then release everything that doesn't. At first, this feels uncomfortable because the human mind craves certainty. We want guarantees that our efforts will always be rewarded. We want assurance that good people will always succeed and kind people will always be treated fairly. Reality rarely offers those guarantees, but strangely enough, accepting uncertainty doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. The moment you stop demanding certainty from life, uncertainty loses much of its power to frighten you. Think about an archer preparing to shoot an arrow. The archer can choose the finest bow, practice for years, focus completely, and release the arrow with perfect technique. Everything up to that point belongs to the archer, but once the arrow leaves the bowstring, countless factors come into play. A sudden gust of wind, an unexpected movement of the target. Conditions beyond anyone's control. A wise archer judges success by the quality of the shot, not merely by whether the arrow hits the center. Life asks us to think the same way. Judge yourself by the excellence of your effort, not by outcomes that were never fully yours to command. This shift changes the way you experience failure. Most people see failure as evidence that they aren't good enough. A Stoic sees failure as information. If your effort was honest and disciplined, then the result becomes feedback rather than a verdict on your worth. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin asking, "What can this teach me?" Those two questions lead to completely different lives. There is another reason people struggle to become emotionally untouchable. They confuse emotional control with emotional suppression. They believe strength means pretending nothing hurts. So they bury disappointment, ignore sadness, and deny fear until those emotions quietly accumulate beneath the surface. Eventually, something small happens, and months of hidden emotion explode all at once. The Stoics never encouraged that. They didn't ask people to become emotionless statues. They asked them to become thoughtful observers of their own minds. Imagine sitting beside a river. Leaves float across the surface, one after another. You notice each leaf, but you don't jump into the water to chase it downstream. Your thoughts and emotions can be treated the same way. Anger appears, notice it. Fear appears, notice it. Jealousy appears, notice it. The mistake is believing you must immediately obey every feeling that enters your mind. Not every emotion deserves your trust. Sometimes emotions are wise signals. Other times they're frightened stories created by an anxious imagination. Wisdom comes from learning the difference. Have you ever noticed how emotions lose much of their power the moment you observe them without judgment? Instead of saying, "I am angry," try saying, "I'm noticing anger." It seems like a small difference, but psychologically it's enormous. The first statement turns anger into your identity. The second recognizes it as a temporary experience passing through your mind. You are not your anger. You are the one observing it. You are not your fear. You are the one becoming aware of it. That small shift creates just enough distance for wisdom to step in before impulse takes over. This is why emotionally resilient people often appear calm in situations that overwhelm everyone else. It's not because they feel nothing. It's because they've practiced creating space between emotion and action. While others react immediately, they pause. In that pause, they remember their values. They remember who they want to become. And instead of allowing the moment to control them, they choose the response that aligns with their character. Imagine how different your life would feel if every insult had to wait for your permission before affecting you. Imagine if every disappointment first had to pass through the filter of your own judgment. Imagine if frustration no longer dictated your actions, but simply became another passing visitor you could observe without surrendering your peace. That isn't fantasy. It's a skill. Like every skill, it becomes stronger each time you practice it. The world will continue testing you. Difficult people won't disappear. Unexpected setbacks will still arrive. Life will never stop presenting moments that invite you to lose your composure. But every challenge also presents another opportunity. Another chance to remember that your greatest source of strength has never been the ability to control the world around you. It's the ability to govern the world within you. And once that realization becomes a habit, instead of just an idea, you'll discover that emotional freedom was never something waiting to be found. It was something waiting to be practiced. The greatest obstacle to becoming emotionally untouchable isn't the world. It isn't difficult people, bad luck, or painful circumstances. It's the quiet voice inside your own mind that never seems to stop talking. Every day it judges, compares, exaggerates, and predicts disasters that often never happen. Left unchecked, that voice becomes your master, but trained with wisdom, it becomes your greatest ally. Marcus Aurelius understood this battle better than anyone. Although he was one of the most powerful men in the world, his private writings reveal that his greatest struggle wasn't governing an empire, it was governing himself. Every morning he reminded himself that he would meet people who were selfish, dishonest, arrogant, impatient, and unreasonable. Not because he was pessimistic, but because he wanted reality to surprise him less and disturb him even less. Think about how differently most people begin their day. They expect everything to go smoothly. They assume everyone will be polite. They imagine their plans will unfold perfectly. Then the smallest inconvenience arrives, and suddenly frustration takes over. A delayed flight ruins the vacation. A rude customer destroys the afternoon. An unexpected bill creates panic. The problem isn't always the event itself. The problem is that reality failed to match the story they had already written in their minds. The Stoics reversed that process. They accepted that life would be unpredictable, and because of that acceptance, they became remarkably difficult to disturb. When disappointment finally arrived, it wasn't an interruption of reality, it was simply part of reality. Imagine walking through a forest after a heavy rain. If you expect the ground to be perfectly dry, every muddy step feels like an annoyance. But if you already know the path will be wet, you simply adjust your footing. The mud hasn't changed, only your expectation has. Much of emotional suffering works exactly the same way. We don't suffer only because life is difficult. We suffer because we expected it to be easier. This doesn't mean becoming cynical or expecting the worst from everyone. It means replacing unrealistic expectations with resilient ones. Instead of expecting people never to disappoint you, expect that everyone, including yourself, will sometimes make mistakes. Instead of expecting life to always be fair, expect that fairness and unfairness are both part of the human experience. These expectations don't make you weaker, they make you prepared. Preparation is one of the quiet superpowers of the Stoic mind. An unprepared mind reacts. A prepared mind responds. Think of a firefighter entering a burning building. Their calm isn't created because the fire isn't dangerous. Their calm comes from preparation. They trained long before the emergency arrived. In the same way, emotional resilience isn't built in the middle of a crisis. It's built during ordinary moments, through daily habits that strengthen your character before life demands it. This is why the Stoics emphasized reflection every single day. They didn't wait until life collapsed to examine themselves. They asked difficult questions while everything was still calm. Where did I lose my patience today? What disturbed my peace? Did I act according to my values or according to my emotions? What could I do differently tomorrow? These weren't questions asked to produce guilt. They were asked to produce growth. Imagine ending each day not by scrolling endlessly through your phone, but by reviewing your own mind, not criticizing yourself, but studying yourself. Over weeks and months, patterns begin to emerge. You notice the situations that trigger insecurity. You notice the conversations that drain your energy. You notice how often your mood depends on things outside your control. Awareness becomes the first step toward freedom, because you can't change what you refuse to see. Another practice the Stoics quietly mastered was gratitude, though not in the way it's often discussed today. Their gratitude wasn't based on everything going well. It was rooted in recognizing that every new day offered another opportunity to practice virtue. Even hardship became something to appreciate, because hardship revealed strengths that comfort could never develop. Consider how muscles grow. They don't become stronger while resting. They become stronger by resisting weight. Character follows the same principle. Patience is meaningless without delays. Courage has no purpose without fear. Forgiveness cannot exist without being hurt. Self-control has no value without temptation. Every challenge that enters your life carries within it the possibility of strengthening a particular part of your character. This changes the way you see adversity. Instead of asking why life keeps testing you, you begin asking what quality this challenge is inviting you to develop. Is this teaching patience, humility, discipline, compassion? Every obstacle becomes a form of training instead of punishment. There's an old saying that smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. It's easy to admire those words until you're caught in your own storm. Yet history repeatedly reminds us that the strongest individuals weren't shaped by comfortable lives. They were shaped by difficult ones. Hardship refined them because they refused to let hardship define them. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about emotional strength is believing that it means never feeling pain. Even the Stoics experienced grief, disappointment, loneliness, and fear. They weren't superhuman. They were deeply human. The difference was that they refused to let temporary emotions become permanent identities. Feeling afraid doesn't make you a fearful person. Feeling sadness doesn't make your life hopeless. Feeling anger doesn't make you an angry person. Emotions are visitors. Character is what remains after those visitors leave. Imagine your mind as a house with many windows. Thoughts and emotions pass by like changing weather. Some days the sky is bright, other days storms appear. But you are not the weather. You are the house that remains standing through every season. The mistake is believing that today's emotional weather will last forever. It won't. Just as every storm eventually runs out of rain, every emotion eventually loses its intensity if you stop feeding it with endless attention. This understanding creates an extraordinary kind of confidence. Not the confidence that says, "Nothing bad will happen to me," but the confidence that says, "Whatever happens, I can meet it with character." That is a confidence no circumstance can take away, because it isn't built on luck, success, wealth, or approval. It's built on the quiet certainty that your response always belongs to you. Take a moment and think back to the most difficult season of your life. At the time, it probably felt endless. You may have wondered if things would ever improve, yet here you are. You survived days you once believed would break you. That realization should remind you of something important. You are already stronger than many of your fears give you credit for. The question is no longer whether life will test you. It will. The question is who you will become because of those tests. Will you allow every disappointment to harden your heart, or will each challenge become another opportunity to strengthen your wisdom? Every single day, that choice belongs to you. Becoming emotionally untouchable isn't a destination you reach one morning and never think about again. It's a practice. Some days you'll succeed, other days you'll lose your patience, react impulsively, or allow someone else's words to disturb your peace. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. The Stoics never demanded perfection. They demanded progress. Progress happens quietly. It appears in the moment you choose silence instead of a pointless argument. It appears when criticism no longer keeps you awake at night. It appears when someone else's success inspires you instead of making you jealous. It appears when setbacks become lessons instead of excuses to quit. These moments may seem small, but together they reshape your character in ways that eventually become impossible to ignore. One day, you'll notice something remarkable. The situations that once controlled you no longer have the same power. The insult that once ruined your entire week barely occupies your thoughts. The failure that once felt devastating becomes a valuable teacher. The uncertainty that once filled you with anxiety becomes another part of life's rhythm. Nothing around you may have changed, yet everything within you has. That is the quiet victory the Stoics dedicated their lives to achieving. Not fame, not wealth, not comfort. Freedom. The kind of freedom that cannot be bought, inherited, or taken away. The freedom of a mind that belongs only to itself. So the next time life challenges you, pause before reacting. Remember that every moment of difficulty presents two paths. One path gives your peace away to circumstances you cannot control. The other strengthens the person you are becoming. Choose the second path often enough, and something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop chasing a peaceful life because you become a peaceful person. And once that transformation takes place, you'll discover the greatest Stoic truth of all. No one can truly control the person who has learned to master themselves. If this message challenged the way you think, don't let it end here. Choose one idea from today's video and practice it before the day is over. Real change never begins by collecting more information. It begins with a single decision, repeated every day. If you're committed to building a mind that remains calm when the world becomes chaotic, subscribe and continue this journey with us. And before you leave, tell me in the comments, what is one situation where you refuse to give away your peace anymore? Your answer might be the reminder someone else needs today.